Can you hear me okay?
I can. How are you
Good, good.
doing?
I'm doing great. Hey, sorry to wake you up.
Huh? What's the time here? It's 7 a.m. 7 a.m. I came out of a very deep sleep and I was like, oh, it's good though. Had a nice shower
Okay.
and yeah, did my wee affirmations, get ready for the day, choose this day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, well, it sounds like now, do we have a agenda? Are we going to free flow? How do you want to do it?
I reckon just free flow.
Okay.
Just ask you a couple of questions
Sure.
and then
Sure.
just have a conversation.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Is that how you happy to do that?
I'm good. I'm good. However you
Okay.
want to do it. So right now we're going to have a conversation between friends.
Yes, that's
Okay.
good. Yeah, get to know you and
Absolutely.
yeah, really admire what you do. So
So you had a couple of questions that you had posted. You want to discuss those, or you just want to go in a different direction? How do you want to do it?
um are we recording now?
We are.
Oh, amazing, cool. All right, well, I guess just start by, for my audience, how would you describe yourself besides I
Well,
am?
one of the things that DeCarlo is a metaphysical teacher, and this came about literally because I was searching scripture and I wanted something more. I just wasn't finding myself fulfilled, and it wasn't the problem wasn't scripture; it was my understanding of scripture and my own personal indoctrination of scripture. Because of course, for years started studying the scripture when I was about 14 years old.
Yeah.
And that's when I got, we call the experience being saved, so I got saved. And so at that point, I started studying the scriptures and trying to study to show myself approved, and found myself in various denominations and so forth. And
Yes.
I found myself just kind of getting to a point, and I felt that there was something more that I was missing. And I
Mm-hmm.
came across the Neville Goddard teachings, and what it allowed me to do was kind of put all the pieces together, because for so many years, and I think you know what I mean, so
Yeah,
a lot of it
definitely.
started coming to place because for a long time, the God that I knew was out there, outside of me, up there in heaven, so I
Yeah,
figured if I go up far enough that I would reach him. Absolutely.
yeah,
So
yeah.
what Neville caused me to do was to look within. And a lot of people look at Neville and they think that he's this cult leader. Only thing that Neville's doing is what Scripture has told us to do all along. But we
Mm-hmm.
missed it because we looked at the history version of Scripture, and we looked at the words that were given by the teachers of Scripture, and we never really looked at it from a place of revelation, God revealing to us, in us, as it were.
Yes.
So what DeCarlo started doing about 15 years ago was applying what he discovered in the teachings of Neville. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what I teach. And it's not about me indoctrinating anyone to Christianity or any other religion, but for them to discover the divine within themselves. And that's
Yes.
my ultimate goal, is whatever that means to you, because what I know is when you start looking, you're going to discover. And this was
Making
God's
yourself
plan.
known.
Absolutely. And I believe this was God's plan all along, but many of us took the religious path. And I'm not saying anything's wrong with religion, but what I
Yeah.
am saying is eventually you got to kind of listen to the still small voice within. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where I come from when I teach. And when Mr. Lindo and I come together, our goal is for each person to discover the divine within themselves.
Yes, it's fantastic. When I found your channel and your teachings,
Yeah.
you just have such a good grasp on it,
Yeah.
and the scriptures, you just can they just come out of you and you flow
Absolutely.
so nicely. And I've learned, got so many little pockets of wisdom, especially about, Linda will just say something random. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, and it just clicks.
Yeah.
When you're reading Neville and it's just like, oh my gosh, I fully understand this now.
Yeah.
Because for me growing up, I was taking the church and stuff, but I was the same. I didn't really understand it. And I kind of strayed away from it, and I didn't want to know anything about it because I was scared. Deep down, I feared God, I don't exactly know where that came from, but yeah, and then,
Indoctrination.
yeah,
Indoctrination.
indoctrination, yeah, and you sinner, you this, you that, and
Exactly.
then
God's going to get you. You're going to hell. So yeah,
you're
absolutely.
going to hell. Yeah, spook me a lot. And then I had a massive awakening and I just wanted to find what was happening to me. So I turned to scriptures, and I think you had to be at a certain level of consciousness to be able to understand Neville's teachings, because I've seen his face floating around on YouTube, and I was like, I want to click him, but I couldn't yet. I think until I'd read a few books and I got to a position, and then I listened to him, and then it's just like it all opened up, and I started understanding and implementing it, and it's been amazing since then. Like, watching my whole reality break down and then rebuild up.
Absolutely.
When you know, the old version of yourself and the old ways are breaking down, you're like, oh no. Making way for the new to come through, isn't it?
It is. You know what? And you said something about the old version. When I first heard the teachings of Neville, to be honest with you, it scared me, because it took me away from everything that I thought I knew, you know, and it started causing me to look within. And when he says that you're gods, I think that many people misunderstand what he's saying. We're collectively God. You know, it's
of the one.
Absolutely. It's like cells in the body. So all the cells make up the one. Now, a lot of times people want to just be the one cell, and then we want to say, oh, I'm God, you know. And if we say just that and we just focus on the I, the ego, as it were, then we miss who we truly are. Collectively, we're all gods. You know, and many of us want to get into this. We hear the teachings of Neville, and we get into it with the mindset of manipulating others. But that's really shouldn't be the goal. The goal is discovering the divine within yourself. And as we begin to think appropriately, then we begin to create the life that we desire. Would you agree?
Yes, I agree. And I noticed the more that I discovered the divine within myself, and like, you know, I started to heal myself, the other selves and other people around me were starting to change and reflect back my inner change. And I do know what you mean when you say it's quite spooky. You know, there's so much responsibility. You know, what do you mean my thoughts create? What do you mean, you know, my words create? And I had to look at my whole life and where I was and take responsibility. And like, instead of, because I always thought, I'm here because of this, I'm here because of that. Absolutely. This needs to change until I, was forced to look within in my own mind and, you know, fully accept that I'm where I'm at due to my own thinking and past errors. But then it was amazing. But I've had the ego class, like, oh, I'm God. And, you know, calm down, ego. Okay, you're trying to come back. And when you try to explain the concept of it, a lot of people, you know, I know my mum's beautiful, but she's always like, oh, Gareth, you're going mad. Like,
absolutely. You know, you say that, but they said the exact same thing about Jesus. Matter of fact, they said he was beside himself. In other words, what they were saying, that he was crazy. So his siblings and his parents went out to find him so that they could correct him, because he was saying certain things that were uncommon for his day. And that's with anyone. I mean, you know, with Neville, they said he had a demon, that he was, you know, this cult leader and things like that. The mad
mystic.
Exactly, the mad mystic of 48th Street, whatever street he was residing on, you know. And so when people hear this stuff for the first time, it's not until they really take inventory of their own lives and they really listen to the message, then they begin to look within and they say, I get it.
Yes, and then you have that wee revelation. And like, you know, my mum, she's been, you know, traditional kind of Christian, so I guess me coming with this new information is really challenging her whole belief system and reality. But she's done amazing to actually like, listen, I'm like, you need to give this a try. She actually manifested herself a wee black cat, which was amazing. You know, I was like, we don't need to argue about this. Let's just give it a try. Go to sleep imagining it, because her cat passed away and she wanted a new black one. And I was just like, go to sleep each night pretending you have the wee cat, like, you know, each day. And within a month, boom, she had a black cat in her hand. She's like, we need to make a video. It was so good, you know.
Well, you know, you said something there. The truth of the matter is the principles work no matter what your religious beliefs are. If you're an atheist or if you're agnostic, if you try the principles, if you begin to see in your mind's eye let's say the black cat, and you begin to believe that that black cat's going to be manifested. We do this all the time, but we don't, we take it for granted. And we say, oh, that was just going to happen anyway. But your mom was proving it. And my thing is with anyone, don't believe this stuff because we say it. Test it for yourself. Absolutely.
Try it.
Yeah.
Because if you just believe this, it's just another story, isn't it? It's not full truth to them. What would be a basic, for someone who's beginning, what would be a basic way for them to start manifesting? If it was someone fresh, new, what would you suggest for them?
Well, the truth of the matter is we're all manifesting anyway. What I try to do is get people to be mindful of their manifestations. For example, recently I was thinking about a particular meal, and I thought about the meal and said, oh, that would really be nice to have. And about a week or so after saying that, my wife made the meal. And I told her, I said, you know, I was just thinking about this meal and you created it and you made it for me and I appreciate it. And she said, you know, well, only thing you really had to do was ask for the meal. But that's not the point. My point is to get everyone to understand you're manifesting all the time. But a friend of mine, what she did recently was she did something called the butterfly. And in this, she told her group to just think about a butterfly. Imagine seeing a butterfly. And throughout the week, just be mindful of seeing a butterfly. Now, depending upon where you're at, you're saying, well, DeCarlo, it's wintertime here and, you know, it's snow on the ground, so we're not going to see any butterflies. But the butterflies could be, let's say, that beautiful shirt you have on. It could have had a butterfly in that shirt. Or you see somebody with a tattoo. Yeah. Once you become open to whatever the concept or whatever it is that you want to see, then you begin seeing more of them. It's like purchasing a car. All of a sudden, you never saw that car on the road. Now all of a sudden the car is everywhere. So we're manifesting all the time. So what I asked the listeners to do was just think about something you'd like to see manifested in your life. And let's not get outrageous at the beginning. Let's not say $5 million. Let's not do that. But just say, money coming into my life. Now, don't give an amount to it, whatever, but just an opportunity or money, whatever, and begin to plant that seed and see money coming into your life, for example. See a relationship, see a person that you haven't talked to for a while coming into your life. Plant the seed of whatever it is that you desire to see manifested in your life. It may be a meal or somebody giving you an opportunity. Whatever that thing is, plant the seed. And I say we do this all the time. For example,
nonstop.
And that's true. We're always on. I went to the store recently, and when I was growing up, we have, I don't know if you have it there, so I'll say it anyway, but it's called KFC or Kentucky Fried Chicken. Okay. So when I was growing up, instead of the hard biscuit that they have in the meal now, they used to have this little Hawaiian bun. So it was this really soft bun, and it really tasted good with the chicken. And I said, you know, I would really love to have a Hawaiian bun and some KFC. So I went to KFC and I got my chicken, but I had to go to the store because, of course, KFC did not have these little Hawaiian buns. And so when I got to the store, they didn't have the Hawaiian bun. I was kind of disappointed. But there was a young lady working in the store. She had the little pack that I was looking for, and she asked her manager, she says, where did these buns go? She said, right over there next to the young man. So she pointed the girl right over to me with her Hawaiian bun. I got the Hawaiian bun, my KFC. Now that seems like something simple, and somebody says, well, that would have happened anyway. The thing is, what you don't realize is once you give your subconscious mind something to work with, it's going to begin to work that situation out in such a way that it's going to be manifested in your life. It's like we say, tragic, for example, well, things never work out for me. And then what we discover, things never work out for me. You know, so we do it all the time. Only thing we're asking you to do is to be more conscious of what it is that you're doing it about. Would you agree?
Yes, I agree. That's the word, consciously manifesting. That's why I'm really aware of my thoughts. I'm like the gatekeeper of certain things. And if I catch a not so great thought now, you know, I won't judge myself, but I'm like, oh, hey, no, that's not truth. Or if the mind monkey mind starts going on a tangent, you know, thinking bad about someone, I'm like, stop it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know someone, they were like, oh, I'll manifest a unicorn. Next day, they walk out and they seen like a toy, a toy unicorn.
Absolutely.
And that's how it happens. I've been like learning to manifest a bit of money. You know, I've been counting cash, which is quite funny. Then my mate comes over and he's got 2.5K in cash, and I'm counting his cash. I'm like, okay, well, this needs to be my cash. Or I always suggest starting with a free coffee. Even, you know, I'm a big advocate of writing things down. Like, I am so happy and grateful I receive free coffee on a regular basis. Or I'm so happy and grateful I receive meals.
Absolutely.
And how it works so fast. Every meeting I go to, they'll be giving me coffee. I was like, I need to stop drinking coffee, but everyone just keeps giving me coffee. I'm like, oh, need to change that belief. And a good way to test it, I always say, is like to say a color, like, you know, green, 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 and then you look around the room and you notice how fast your eyes will pick out every green color. So if someone's always focusing on the negative, or this world's horrific, they're going to see every horrific thing. But if we can switch a little bit, work to see the positive and the love and the beauty, you'll see that everywhere as well.
Absolutely. There was a gentleman by the name of, he was a mogul, an insurance mogul in the mid-1900s. His name was W. Clement Stone. And W. Clement Stone had this concept that everything was working out for his good. And so, like you just said, the person that wants to see, let's say, chaos or disaster, then of course that's what they're going to discover. Or simply the color green. If you start noticing the color green, it's like me telling you right now, don't think about a pink elephant. Now, you try to think about something else, but for a moment, even if it's for a moment, you think about that pink elephant. So the same thing holds true with, you know, if you're thinking about a negative thought. W. Clement Stone took nothing and turned it into a multi-million-dollar, almost billion-dollar industry, which was amazing in his time. But he had the concept that everybody was conspiring for his good. And so even when a situation didn't work out the way that he thought that it should, he would say, there's a seed of good in this, and we just need to discover it. You know, and for example, one of his salespeople, they had botched a deal that was worth several $1 million. And the guy said, well, I guess you're going to fire me. He said, no, I just invested $1 million in you. No, I'm not going to fire you. So he looked at the good at it, and we started doing it. And I know people say, well, is that even realistic to think positive? But you know what? Is it realistic to think negative? You know, negative has become our norm. Why is negativity our norm as opposed to being positive as human beings and being creators? It seems to me that it would be easier to think on the positive, but of course, that's just not our nature. But we have to, as you stated earlier, tweak our nature.
It's like the conditioning, you know, the media and that, they're incentivized to get clicks, and what gets clicks? Negativity. And they just post it. I found once I kind of had this big awakening to my thoughts, I had to like kind of bring myself away from people for a while until I could get my mind right, because I just became so hypersensitive to lots of negativity and the way people would speak. Like I ended up learning neuro-linguistic programming, and they're all about positive thinking and thoughts. And you know, I kind of got a bit crazy for a while to try avoid things. So, but now I've learned to accept it. And like, you know, the dark, the yin and the yang, they dance together. They're not canceling each other out. So, which was really powerful, and be able to have a negative situation. And like you said, look for the positive. What's 5 ways I could reframe this for it to be working for my highest good? You know, like maybe losing a client, you're like, okay, well, I learned this, this, and this from them, which is going to help me do even better for a new one. I love your post of, by the way, mind. What does it say? What you mind always matters. That's so good. I want to go back to the, you know, how we said we're the cells of God. So collectively we're God. So that's how I see it as well. And everyone is God individually expressed. Absolutely. So when I receive something, I'm always like, oh, thank you, God. This is God working through my mother, through my father, through DeCarlo to teach me. And I got to this point where, oh my God, it's only me and God. And everything is him crafting his son in the best way possible through the bad or even the good, you know. It's bringing me on this path of, you know, learning and growing, and that's how I started to see everything as good. Well, yeah, there to help craft and elevate me into a new person. That everyone is gone, pushed out. It's all
Absolutely.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is. It is. You know, and as you're speaking on that, collectively we are God, but individually we are individually the only begotten. So God is expressing himself into each one of us as if we're the only ones. But like you said earlier, we have to also honor the mother, the father, the others that are also God being expressed. God is so vast that it takes right now about 8 billion people to express who he is. You know, and each one of these expressions, none of them are alike. That's the beautiful and the amazing thing, is that no two expressions are alike. And everybody is trying to be like somebody else, and they're missing their own individual uniqueness that God wants to express himself through. Somebody recently posted in one of my groups that, you know, there's nobody teaching what Neville teaches. And he was looking for a teacher like Neville. I said, the thing is, God was expressing himself through Neville as Neville, just like he's expressing himself through you as you. As Mr. Linder will often say, God doesn't create duplicates, you know, and that's a wonderful thing. So if you and I are teaching the exact same message, because we're individuals, that message is going to come out different. So there's going to be people that are attracted to your message. There's going to be people that are attracted to my message. There doesn't have to be, as it were, a competition, because what we're teaching is different aspects of God. And it goes back to the parable. All these blind men are touching an elephant. One person touches the trunk and he says, oh, God's a rope. You know, another person touches the ear and says, oh, God's an ear. He's this big old door. Oh, then somebody touches the tail and says, oh, no, he's this little bitty thing. We're all individual expressions of the divine. And if we get that, then we can begin to understand our uniqueness, and we can begin to express and expound that uniqueness to the world. And people, it says, if I be lifted up. The I that he's talking about, we keep looking on the God out there, but he's talking about the God within you. When you lift up God within you, all the things that you're looking at manifesting, all the things that you're looking at drawing into your life will be drawn unto you. All manifestation will be drawn unto me as we lift up ourselves in God's consciousness.
Yes. Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And the pure intelligence as well, you're right, there's no duplicates. Like, I started even just looking at my body. I was like, oh my God, I eat a bit of food, and then my body, the intelligence turns it into my human being, you know, like it would become what we eat. I look at plants and I'm like, oh, that's a plant. But I'm like, oh, that's a word. I don't actually know what this is. I could stare at it for hours and never understand it. But everything is just so different. Like, I started seeing the beauty in everything. But God being lifted up in you, I had what they call the promise.
Yes.
Or I would identify as the promise happening of when Christ woke and I woke into the God self, and God was within me. And that was like a long process. Really scary, but really beautiful. And thought, oh gosh, I'm going to end up in a wee hospital here. Like, be careful when I talk to him about this, and we locked up. But how would you explain the promise?
Neville says it this way, and then I'll expound on my experience. But Neville says it's self in self risen. So God in self. What the promise is us coming to the realization that God is in us, and that we and Father are one. That's the biggest thing about the promise, is it's really coming into your realization of your oneness with the allness known as God. And the funny thing was, before experiencing anything, and when I would hear Neville talking about the promise, I had wrote that off as Neville's experience, but I told myself, I don't need a promise to know that I'm one with God. I'm okay with my relationship with Father. I know that I'm one with Father. And so I wrote the promise off as Neville's experience. And
Yeah.
so when he says that it's totally a surprise when it happens, it is.
Yeah.
I was asleep and I woke in this vision, and the serpent was rising literally out of my spine. And
Wow.
in the serpent, it was transparent. So I saw this golden liquid light, and it was
Yeah.
rising up from my spine into my skull. Now, I woke up and I said, that was interesting. Now, again, mind you, I still did not equate it with the promise at that moment. I just
Mhm.
wrote it off as an interesting dream. And I say that many people have had experiences, but since they didn't understand what it was that they were experiencing, they just wrote it off as this weird dream.
Yeah.
So I went back to sleep, and again, I'm awakened in this vision, and I'm on this bed full of blood, and there's a child next to me. And there's three people I didn't know. Neville said they were his brothers. I didn't know these people. I just knew the people were around observing me and this baby in this bed. And like I said, this blood that I saw, and and there were some other details. But when I awoke from that, then I realized what I had just experienced in the previous dream and in this dream. But like I said, for me, it wasn't something, many people are chasing the promise, but
Yeah.
you can't force the promise to happen. You
Mm.
know, this is divine of origin.
Yeah.
So, and the funny thing is, even after the promise happens, as you know, we wake up feeling the same. We have the same challenges. What
Mm-hmm.
the promise is an affirmation that we and Father are one.
Mm-hmm.
It don't stop you from being frustrated at times when you're dealing with a situation,
Yeah.
but you begin to understand, uh, blessed is the man, woman who does not condemn themselves for that which they have allowed. You realize that it's not a God out there, but God's in you. And you realize because of this relationship, your whole life force, everything that you live, do, be, is because God in you. Before,
Uh-huh.
you see life force, you see life, and you kind of psychologically understand that God's a part of me. But
Yeah.
I think that once you have the experience of the promise, it brings clarity to not only God in you, but God in me, God in
Mm-hmm.
everyone else. And that's the goal. We come to Neville initially listening to his teachings because we want things. That's naturally. We want to manifest this. We want to manifest that. We want to manifest our SP. We
Get
want
me,
to
get
manifest.
me.
Exactly. Then you get to a place that you want to go deeper. And the thing about experiencing the promise is that you understand that you are one with Father, and so is everyone else. And you
Yeah.
begin looking and conducting your business differently. You begin handling your relationships differently. And like I said,
Uh-huh.
it doesn't mean that you don't have conflicts and things like that. You may even get off track. But what I
Yeah.
discovered for myself is that you get back on track sooner because you understand who you are.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, I was meditating and the snake started coming up my whole
Mm,
body,
mm,
wriggling, and
mm.
I was like, what is happening to me? And I told my friend, and I was like, there's a snake inside me. And then he's like, it's Kundalini, the medical symbol. It shows the
Yeah,
snakes going up and then the angel
absolutely.
wings.
Up the
And I'm
pole.
like, oh, that's amazing. Okay, keep doing this meditation, going up the energy centers, and then it just boom hit my heart. This
Mm,
energy, and my heart exploded.
mm,
And then it went up and hit my brain. My brain felt like it exploded. And I just, next thing you know, I was standing on this balcony looking over this beautiful view
mm.
and like the wind blowing in my hair. And I just felt like tranquil peace. And I was like, where am I? And then I came back into my room and I'm like, what just happened? And from that moment, I had never felt so much love. And I'd be driving and I'd look at things like a tree and I'd have to pull over because I'd be crying. Like, oh, that tree is so beautiful. Like, that tree is me.
Yeah.
I had a unity feeling with everything.
Yeah.
And my brain started just pulsating.
Yeah.
And I started being drawn to more metaphysical teachings and wanting to learn and seek God. I just had this desire and drive. I had to seek, and I just seeked and seek. And then I had another experience. It felt like a beam was attached to my head. And for a few weeks, I was like, after that, I was like, what is happening to me? And then all my cells started vibrating. And I was driving, and I was like, I thought I was being abducted by aliens or something, you know. I was like driving, I was like, oh, at least wait till I get out the car. And I got into my bed, and I was sitting there, and then this energy just like thrusting down through me and like bursting every like vessel in my body, and my whole body, I was like an electric eel. So, and I couldn't handle how much pleasure I was in. It was almost like painful that I was like feeling so good. And energy's all moving around me, and every time I close my eyes it's pulling me into something, and I'm like, oh, I was too scared, and I'm like trying to Google what's happening, and then this voice in me is like, why do you always look to the outside when the answers are within? And I was like, oh, stop it. But that was amazing. Then I was doing another meditation, this angel meditation, and as you mentioned, the golden liquid light, it just descended down into me, and it like purified my whole body. Like I just went numb in this bliss, and I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to live? I don't want to do anything. I just want to stay like this forever. The gold, and then my brain opened up, and I could see angels and that. But coming with the angels, and I could see the more dark side as well. And they were all there, and it was, I didn't know what's happening to me. It took quite a while for me to integrate. I felt like I was walking on water, like everywhere I walked, that everything was lighter. But then it got more intense, and I was like focusing on this, they call it the Sacred Heart, you know, Jesus points to there. And I was focusing it, and then my body started like vibrating, and I started merging with everything. And I don't even know how to explain it, but I could just see everything. And I'm sitting on my bed like, who am I? Who am I? And then, so called, that's when Christ came, descended into me type thing, or woken within me, and just keep repeating these words. I am the Son of God. I am God in the flesh. Repeating over and over. My hands were going into mudras. Just speaking weird tongues, and my body was like, I wasn't even in control. It was like pushing and like popping certain vessels. Like it was really strange. Like, but as he came in, and keep repeating all this stuff, and then I was looking in the mirror. I couldn't even notice who I was. Like God had fully come into me, and I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do from here? But I had that full realization that I am the Father of one. And then like it gave me a lot of compassion and love for other people, because I'm like, well, you're a particle of me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, started treating people a lot kinder and loving. And yeah, it took me a long time, because something like that to happen, my older reality had to crumble for a new one to be brought. But yeah, I had some special people in my life that helped, you know, guide me and keep me a bit more sane. And
and it's needful. It's needful to have those people that you can't, because of course when you share something like this, many people want to cart you off to the insane asylum, you know, because of course it's just uncommon. And it's funny that you were talking about the beam of light. My experience of the dove came like that. It was like, I don't know if you remember those movies where they shoot like this solar beam at you, and it's like waves that come, like pulsating waves. And that was my experience, seeing this dove land down, this light in the shape of a dove land, but it was a pulsating. It wasn't just a continual, it was like waves flowing down on me. And so I only say that because everybody thinks that their experience is going to be exactly like Neville's.
Completely different.
Complete. Father, God, whatever you call source, will speak and touch each one of us differently. And some people have experienced what we call the promise, and they understand their oneness. And you said something, one of the biggest things of the promise is awareness. And like I said, it doesn't mean that you agree with everyone or that thing you don't have conflict. Those things still happen, but you bring to it a different mind. You bring to it a different state of consciousness. And that's the thing, because you do realize that you and Father are one, and that so is everyone else. Not just, like I said, a lot of times with these teachings of Neville, we can get into ego and we can say, I'm the only God, but that's not correct. We really have to get into the realization that we're all a part of the whole that we know as God. Now, we all have our own individual role to play. So in that sense, we're the only God in our reality, but so is everyone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing. I had a kind of a vision like that. We're all on this earth, that the earth's a different earth for each person, or layered on the top of each other. Absolutely. So what I experience in my earth in life will be completely different to what what you see and experience, even though we're here talking to each other on like a different frequency or layer.
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that. I was talking to somebody recently, I think it was even Mr. Lindo, and it's, for example, speaking of different frequencies and so forth, you and I both can look at the color red. Now, we assume that we're looking at the color red and we're seeing the exact same thing. But the truth of the matter is, I could be seeing black and calling it red. You see red and call it red, but we're in agreement and we say that's red. You understand what I'm saying? So because we see differently, we think that we're seeing, or we're in agreement of what it is that we're seeing. But the truth, for example, even at what I see as a dog, at a quantum level, do we really see the same thing? Now, of course, you say that we call this a Yorkshire Terrier, for example. Now, we both are in agreement, but how that thing is processed in my mind, I'm assuming that it's processed in your mind the exact same way, and that may not necessarily be true.
And there's no way to know.
Absolutely. So it goes back to the layers. And so even when we're talking about this manifesting thing, there are those that say you can manifest anything. Everybody don't have the belief system to manifest anything, everything. So scripture says it this way, be it unto you according to your belief. So you got a person that gets into music and he becomes a billionaire, and you get somebody else that gets into music and they struggle their whole life trying to make the music industry work for them. So when we say that anyone can manifest anything, they can manifest anything that they can hold in consciousness. You know what I'm saying? So if I can hold the belief that I can be, let's say, a millionaire, then I can live out being a millionaire. But if I have conversations within myself that says money's bad, then I'm never really, because what's going to happen is, even if I attract $1 million, I'll find a way to lose it, because my core belief says money's bad. If people say to you, all that stuff is just a bunch of hoopla and, your imagination and your daydreaming and fantasy, then for that person, that's exactly what it's going to be. But for the person that says, absolutely. So to the person that says, I really want to know for myself first person, then he or she will discover first person these experiences. Would you agree?
Yes, I totally agree. It's a seek and you shall find, knock and it shall open type thing. That's wonderful. That's just going to be mind blowing, and there's so much truth there, isn't there?
It is.
And that comes back from the whole conditioning, like you're saying, someone wanting to be a rock star. One kid could have grown up on YouTube watching only rock stars be successful and pride themselves with success, where the other could have been watching someone struggle, and their parents or teachers tell them, oh, you won't be able to do that, it's hard. and then it becomes a core belief. So then their subconscious manifests that that belief over and over again until it's like you see someone, oh, men always cheat. And they'll constantly over and over be with the same man that will live out their belief for them, and until you can change your belief, you change your world, right?
Absolutely. And sometimes you have to be mindful. Even, the thing is, every one of us are given to think and to choose this day, but many of us really have given that over to the five senses, the world. And so if, for example, a parent says, you'll never amount to anything, and you as an individual own that, buy into it, then it's like the father-in-law says to the daughter as she's marrying this new man, he's a bum and he'll never amount to anything. And the man becomes, as it were, a self-fulfilling prophecy of the father. Now, we can step outside of that, but first and foremost, we have to become aware of it. And see, until we become aware that we can move from one state of poverty to a state of abundance, from a state of ill health to a state of health, to a state of not being in a relationship to being in a loving relationship. And I stress the loving relationship because all relationships are not beneficial, but everybody doesn't know that. And many times people enter into relationships based off of ego drives as opposed to spiritual drives that says, I want somebody that's going to be for my best interest and I want to be for their best interest. We just see them on the outward and we see outward appearance, and no matter what their personality is like, we gravitate towards that person, say, I gotta have that person and that person only, but we also have to get with whatever comes with that person. So if there's baggage or whatever, then of course you own that as well, and so we have to be mindful of our manifestations.
You're very, you're not judged by appearance. Like, oh, she's pretty, I'm going to go for her. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's so true. Not all relationships are good. And if they're just like, I want to manifest a relationship, you're doing it every day, you're the person you meet through work or friends, families, or relationships. Neville touches on how each person of the Bible is a state of consciousness, which I really liked. I had this dream or experience. So it's more than a dream, but it was quite demonic to start with. And then, I was in some dungeon and people crying and whatnot. It was really weird. But in short, I ended up calling upon God or Christ. So let's say I was with the devil, to be honest. He betrayed me and I was trying to fight him and all this stuff. And he's like, I've trapped your consciousness forever. You're here forever. You can't get away. And I was like, do you know who I am? Type thing, you're powerless. And then I was talking to God and the sky opened up and I ascended up through these clouds in this vortex. This is really funny. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? I'm going up. And then I came out and it was like the big gates of heaven type thing, all the clouds. And there was this character of Jesus downloading. And it's like, you have now unlocked Jesus mode. You have unlocked Jesus mode. And he was kind of like a cartoon character. And he's downloading and the doves are flying around and little green things in their mouth. And there was a big board of all these characters that had been unlocked. And it was like Jesus was now blinking. And I'm sitting there just watching this thing and I'm like, what? I've unlocked Jesus mode? What does this mean? And then I was like, okay, now what? And then the devil, the guy came up and he pushed this red button and I fell back down into this dungeon and there was all people crying again. And I was like, what is happening? And then I was like, this is, I was like, in the background, there was a little radio playing, you've got to have faith to face to face. You've got to have faith. And then I woke up and everything around me was vibrating. And I'm like, what is happening? And that you've unlocked Jesus mode. Keep repeating in my head throughout weeks to come. And I'm like, what was that? So when it comes to everyone's a state of consciousness, I'm like, is this like a wee game where we unlock characters through our development and our level? And I was like, okay. Because then after that happened, next thing I'm making a YouTube channel and I'm helping teach people these things. And I'm like, oh, and am I in the part where I start teaching and I go through all my trials and tribulations and, even the devil, the darker, who's another aspect of myself, is there to try get me off path,
Yeah.
and you know, covers different people and stuff. And so it's quite.
Yeah.
Did you want to touch base on that state of
I
consciousness?
do. Yeah, yeah. I loved it. I loved it. You know, and often for myself, if I want to get into, I often say this, first of all, from Genesis to Revelation, it's your story. And
Mhm.
every person, I say every man, is Mary awaiting Christ to conceive. What I mean by that is that we can clothe ourselves into any state we desire. So if I want to be into a state of abundance, then I clothe myself in the mindset of Abraham, you know, and I begin walking. I look at my surroundings. What you did was a download mode. And you went through the exact same thing, whether you understood it or not, that Jesus went through. But Jesus was up on a mountain. And
Okay.
and it says in scripture that no one is tempted that is not tempted by their own desires. If Jesus didn't have the desire to have a kingdom, if he didn't have a desire to want to fly, if he didn't have a desire for hunger, there could have been no temptation provided. You understand? As you desire to grow, as you desire to see people around you, the people, the dungeon, the devil, that's the virtual reality we call life. Those people that were being in torment are the people that you're to reach out to, the people you're supposed to touch. Now, ego says, who are you to think that you can do something like that? And so ego keeps reminding you of the old you and keep trying to bring you back into what we call reality. Whereas you got to download. You got to do the download. And so spirit is letting you know that you need only to give your attention to the download. You need only to give your attention to the Christ self within you. And as you begin doing that, of course, you're elevated. It goes back to what I said earlier. If I be lifted up in consciousness, I'll draw all manifestation, all men unto myself. So as you're lifted up and your focus changes from the dungeon, what we call reality, into a higher state of consciousness, what's possible. See, everything is created twice. First is created in the imagination. It's outpictured in what we call reality. But reality is not the reality. Imagination is.
That's the shift around.
That's it. We have it shifted around. We have it turned around. Now, many people listening to this talk would say they're crazy because they don't understand that everything that they see around them started first and foremost in somebody's imagination. And it can't be otherwise. So when I say that every person, every man is Mary awaiting Christ to conceive, Christ is the thing, the salvation that we desire. The way that you give birth to that salvation is giving thought to it, giving attention to it, giving feeling to it, moving in that state of consciousness. As we do that, then we outpicture or give birth to the Christ or salvation, the thing that we desire.
That's beautiful. So you're saying like we're the Christ, we're the Mary, and then like our imagination's the Christ, and for us to impregnate Mary, say, recently I wanted to get a nice suit. So I was imagining myself touching a nice suit, you know, feeling confident, seeing myself confident in the suit. So that would have been Christ impregnating Mary.
Well, and then, that would have been the Christ is the outpicturing. The Christ is the thing that you give birth to, the suit. So the Christ is the child. The Christ is the child. Mary and Joseph is your consciousness. It's what you're picturing on the outside. Think, oh, that's a nice car. I'd like to have it. Pretty soon you own the car in your subconscious, but you own it by imagining, seeing it, feeling it. That's how you pregnate Mary. Mary is your subconscious mind. Mary brings about, once she's impregnated by the thought, whatever thought that you've given her, and understand this thought could be a Christ or it could be a devil.
Yes.
So absolutely. So if we're giving attention to the negative, then subconscious mind says, see, it doesn't care. Only thing it says is, be it unto you according to your faith. So when you impregnate Mary with concepts, with ideals, its job is to outpicture that into what we call reality. It's to make it happen. So you say, nothing good's going to ever happen to me. Then, of course, Mary says, okay, I got that seed. I've been impregnated.
As you
Let me
want.
manifest your Jesus, as it were.
Yeah.
So anything, we do it, again, Joseph, the male, is conscious mind. Us looking around and saying, I sure would like to have, you don't want that person's suit, but you saw that nice suit and you said, man, I would really look good in that suit,
Yeah.
And so you begin imagining yourself in that suit. So you took it from conscious mind. That was the conception. You impregnated Mary, the subconscious, and then it outpictured into what we call your reality.
Yeah, because then, I went to my mum's house and she's like, Gareth, I've been looking at something, I think you'd really like it, and it's a nice, beautiful suit, buys it for me on the spot. And I just got the suit yesterday and I wore it last night and I'm like, yeah, nice.
So you manifested your Christ.
Yeah. So, and I did that with the house I'm living in. I've always wanted to live on the hill. And each night I'd go to sleep imagining I was in my room, but the room was on the hill in a nice mansion on the hill. And next thing you know, a sequence of events came. My flat that I was in, the lease was up. We had to find a new house, and then I keep saying, I want to live on the hill to the people, and they're like, we'll try find, but we didn't. They didn't want to settle for a 4-bedroom with 5 people, and then I'm like, oh, this isn't it. I mean, to be in the mansion. And then I had this urge, a desire, this thought, go see your friend Tim. So I drove there feeling a bit, oh no, my living situation, what am I going to do? And he's like, oh, your friend Michael's just moved into a mansion on the hill. They're looking for a flatmate. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's happening. And then I messaged him and he hadn't messaged back. And I'm like, oh no. And then I was like, stop worrying, go meditate. And then I imagined that I went and seen him and then him hugging me going, I can't wait for you to live with us.
Yeah.
4:20 in the morning, I had a message from him saying, hey, if you want to view the house, it has to be tonight. I'm going on tour for the next few days. So I'm like, drove there and that exact scene played out. He hugged me. I want you to live here. Now I'm living on if you can.
A mansion on a hill.
Yeah, living on the hill.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, so, that was one of the things when I was like, oh my gosh, this really, really works.
Yeah. And the thing is, as you know, you can't predict how the situation, many of us, we want to do God's work for him. We want to say, well, it has to happen this way and it's got to look, you can't do that. Your job was going to the end. When I got my car, well, first of all, I told myself a story years ago that, if you had a nice car that your bills would be higher, your payments would be higher, when you had to go repairs. And nothing could be further from the truth. I had a car that ran on 3 wheels. And I poured so much money into that car. And it was a cheaper car. With my newer car, the one that I have now, it's more expensive. It's a very nice car, but I don't have as much maintenance. Now, let's not say you don't have any maintenance, but the whole point is we have to change our story. For example, if it's money that we want to attract, we have to change our story about money. If we say that rich people are evil, then of course you're going to do everything you can to repel money because nobody wants to be evil. You couldn't have lived in that house, mansion on a hill years ago when you didn't have the mindset. When you thought, oh, those rich people, whatever that mindset was, it would have prevented
dingy houses.
Yeah. And you said, this is me occupying the state that I'm supposed to be in. But once we change states, all of a sudden, the whole world will begin acquiescing and opening up to us according to the thing that we've envisioned. And we just have to get the message out, and people really have to understand this stuff truly works.
It truly, truly works, and it can transform your life.
Absolutely.
And so fast as well. Once you start, if you start with a little thing, like looking for a butterfly. Oh, I've seen a butterfly. I made videos about how to see a black cat, how to see a dog. Absolutely. Same thing, I have a guitar, I was imagining myself playing a guitar. Next thing you know, I'm at my friend's house holding his guitar. And then I'm at another friend's holding his. And then I'm upstairs, my flatmate's a guitar teacher. I didn't really know. And I'm holding his. Next thing you know, I own a guitar. It's like, it's so quick how it happens. But yeah, a belief around money, I had to change it to, if I have money, I'll have more freedom. If I have money, I can support my parents. If I have money, you know, I can donate, I can help more people. You know, I can live more freely.
Yeah.
And for years of my own, you know, I conditioned myself to have bad money habits and beliefs. So now I'm undoing those.
Absolutely.
And it's starting to come and come. And then, you know, I might notice it drops off or it blocks. I'm like, okay, I still got a little unconscious work to do around this. Yeah. But
it's good that you say that, and that's so true. You know, the thing is, what people need to understand is that you don't just get it all in one, but certain things come to you almost overnight, and you get it. You, for example, somebody can feel like they can manifest health, and all of a sudden, whatever ailment they had just disappears. But then you find in another area of their life, they may not be as successful. It may be relationships. They may have to unlearn some things. So like you said, you're at least aware that when a consciousness comes in that does not align with your new money beliefs, you can say, oh, that's not what I want to manifest. So, you know, okay, I have to unlearn that. I have to begin to say something differently about this belief. And what I want people to understand is that we're all works in process. You know, we're all learning, growing, and then out picturing and then doing it again. You know, you don't get to a certain level and you stop and say, oh, I got all this stuff down. Or you know, when we call getting to that level, you're transcending, you're leaving this life, you know. But one thing that we know about even Neville, he was a continual student. It wasn't like even as he was aging, he was continuously learning. And he said, you know, what I taught you last year may not even be the same this year because I'm continuously being poured into. And many of us will take the Neville teachings, as it were, and we teach them as though they're fixed. Neville was continuously evolving. So something that he may have taught 20 years ago, because he learned something new, he added that new element to his teaching. And we have to be of that mindset that always growing. And if we get something new, we begin to pour that newness, as it were, into those who are listening to us. And then we keep on growing, but never that we're fixed, because the moment you become fixed, you're really deteriorating, you're dying.
Yes. Yeah. So you're not dreaming, you're dying.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how, like, you know, I made that, my first video was about how I manifested this mansion on the hill. And I'd always wanted to do YouTube. And boom, it just picked up, you know, started getting all these views and people coming to me like, you need to make more videos. And like, it's amazing how it started manifesting like that, you know. Next thing you know, making videos. And then the ego started identifying, I'm Gareth the YouTuber. And I started seeing it creep in, you know, and I was like, I'm going to make daily videos. And then I was like, oh God, I'm Gareth the YouTuber and make daily videos. And I'm like, oh, come off it. Like, stop. I try to class the identities. So now I stopped doing daily videos, and I'm like, I'm just going to leave it for a bit and just make the videos as they come to me instead of trying to force it. But seeing the comments, you know, even you'll know as well how, oh my God, you've changed my life, you've transformed my life. Or people like, you don't know, you just stopped me from ending my life, like your video. You read stuff like that, you're like, whoa, you know, it's like, well, thank God for that, you know. God brought you to this video. God put that message through me to give out. You know, I don't know why I spoke about that day.
Absolutely.
People often will be like, the guy's like, I pray to God at night, and then he speaks for you every morning for me. He's like, I ask for help, and then next thing you know, your video's uploaded talking about the exact thing. And I was like, oh, that's like you're manifesting that, you know, like, it's powerful. And then, you know, they'll be like, oh, this really helped me, and they'll show it to their friend, and then that ripple effect, one video, you know, can reach. So when was Jesus, you know, how he could only reach one person, or, you know, only a little group of people at a time, and that would ripple. This day and age, can make a video that can hit 1 million people in a day or whatnot, which, you know, it's really cool.
You know, and he said it. He says, you know, the works that I've done, you shall do, and even greater works shall you do.
Greater.
You know, and I had posted that in a video comment, and somebody responded back and said, laugh out loud, because she thought that it was ludicrous for someone to say that they would do even greater works than Jesus. But the thing is, DeCarlo didn't come up with that.
Yeah.
Jesus did, you know?
Yeah. It's in
And,
scripture.
and it's so true. The truth of the matter is we have the ability now, and he says, if I do not go away, it's needful that I go away, because if I don't go away, then I can only touch one or two or 100 or 1,000. He says, but if I go away, then I spread myself, I pour myself into multitudes of people, and each one of them can share the message. And that's God in each one of us expressing himself as us, you know? And that's the beautiful thing about the whole thing, is that God wants to express himself as the individual listening, as only he can express himself through that individual. And if they can get that, whether it be YouTube or impacting their lives, their families' lives, whatever that message is for them,
Yes.
God desires to do it through them.
Mm-hmm. It brings you. That's when I started seeking, I learned God doesn't just speak one way.
Yeah.
I might ask a question, next thing on the back of a bus, a billboard, or say
Absolutely.
the exact answer,
Yeah.
or listen to a video and you might say something that answers it, or a relationship or a friend, or go get some food and, on the menu, and you're like, oh my gosh, it speaks so many different ways.
Yeah.
And then you might even get this still silent voice.
Absolutely.
I've had a powerful, very powerful, like vibrate my whole body voice from within me. Because I keep, as I sleep, I'd be like, what is love? Oh no, what is God? Like, what is God? Reveal thyself, reveal thyself. And then my whole body just went, and then it was like, what is love? Within me, and giving me lessons. And I'm like, what is going on? But it's very beautiful and so special to me. And I've learned not to share too much. Like with someone, yourself, I'm happy to open up and share. And I know the listeners are on the same path, so they're going to be able to, they'll be on the conscious level to at least be able to listen or take it in, or even they probably have had their own experiences, and it could be a breath of fresh air. We know, people talk about them like, oh, I'm not crazy.
And then, you said something, that was the thing when I started finding communities talking about, let's say, the works of Neville and Dr. Joseph Murphy and so many others that are like-minded. And you realize as you begin communicating what's been given to you, that you're not the odd one, that you're not the crazy one, and that there's a whole community of people. And the wonderful thing that you probably notice in your group, as I notice in mine, it's a melting pot of people, melting pot of traditions, religious beliefs. It's not, and that's the thing. I don't want to discourage any of that. I want people to discover who the divine is within them, because that's what God wants, and Jesus said to the woman at the well, Father is spirit, and those who worship God must worship God in spirit and truth. So they have to understand and discover what that means to them as an individual, and that's the beautiful thing about the journey.
Self-discovery. That's why I find, like, what is God? Asking that question, what is, like, forget everything you've kind of read and seek yourself. What is God? Or reveal thyself. Father, speak. Father, I am here, speak. And getting silent, closing the door of the, what do you call it? Close the closet, get in, shut off the senses, and go within, and you ask, and then just start being conscious and aware and watching your outer world reflect back on what messages, or why did that person say that to me? What does that mean? Like, question and be the observer. Because after all that happened, I actually went to church, and God, like, the voice would just be like, don't judge, Gareth, just observe. Just observe what's happening here in the church. And what I noticed there, might not be the same in every church, but what they were preaching started making me fear myself and fear what was happening to me to be demonic and evil, but I knew it wasn't. It was like the pure grace and beauty of God. And I'm like, and they just keep saying, just observe. Observe. I know I just had to leave, like, because I would go with my mum, and I was like, Mum, I'm sorry, like, I just can't be here anymore. Like, it's not for me. I'm going to worship God within my temple. I'm the church. I'm happy to meditate, and I think of God like nonstop, all the time.
And it's, the thing is, it makes sense because you've come to the realization of who you are. You think about you, you're thinking about God. Now, I know that somebody listening to this would think that that's egocentric, but that's not at all.
That's blasphemy.
Yeah, exactly. You know, a heretic. You know, let's get these guys off of YouTube.
Shut them down.
But then you miss the message.
Yeah.
The name Christian, if you look at it, Christ, I am. And is that usage of a when you use the vowel sound. So
yeah.
I am a Christ, the name. And even when the early church adopted the name, when they called Christians in the book of Acts, it was because they were like that guy. You understand?
Yeah.
They were similar to that guy. And the early church understood their power. For example, Paul and so many others manifested life-changing miracles in the early church. But what happened was, and I hate to say this, but church became a business.
Corporation.
Through an opera. And matter of fact, the goal was not that the people in the church were to come into the realization. They even spoke Latin so that people would not understand the message. The truth of the matter is they're still speaking Latin. And the message is so far removed from who it is that we are. Yeah. We're all children of God, no matter what your religious belief is, no matter what your orientation is. If you're living and breathing, it says that in him we live, we move, we have our existence. That's everybody. Now, the goal is for each person to come into his own, her own personal revelation of who God is to them. And he longs to show that to them. Like he showed it to you, he showed it to me. We call it the promise. And that promise is from God saying that whosoever will, you need only ask and he will reveal himself. But as Mr. Lindell says, you turn to me and I'll turn to you. But there's only one turning, because even as we turn, God in us is turning with us. But turning really means an awareness that God is in us. Once we come to the awareness, then we can begin moving from there. But many people never get to that place, at least in this lifetime.
Yeah, that's it. And I was like, well, how many lifetimes, if people entertain reincarnation, have I gone to get to this point where I've had this now realization, because I've had many other really powerful experiences, and I don't know if it's past lives or, I wake up and my bed's shaking and it's covered in sweat because I watch myself die in a tsunami or fall from a skyscraper, all these random things, and then wake up. And it's so beautiful to experience it, and I wish lots of people would seek for themselves as well, because when I hear something about the church, right, and I don't like to bag on anything, but it's you won't find. Some might, they probably have, but you don't go to church to find God type thing. And that's what I realized. Even as a kid, I'd go there, which is weird. Mum's like, you never enjoyed church. You'd always be there drawing aliens and, as a kid. And there's just something in me that repelled me from it. But after it all happened, I was like, I'm going to go to church. And I actually went. I was going 3 days a week. But then, I started just observing, and the messages wasn't lining up with scriptures and how they're acting, and the certain pastor preaching, and you need to block this person, he's the devil, he's angry, it's you're not treating him like your neighbor, you're not being kind and loving, this and which was good for me to learn. And my own mum, she's been loving the church, and I was like, you need to observe, you need to look at this. She's like, oh, you've ruined the church for me now. And I was like, I haven't ruined it. I was like, just you're becoming more aware and conscious of what's going on. I always found it weird, the tithing. Would you say, I'm not sure, this is the wee concept I have, that so the subconscious, Mary, the wife, rules 90%, 99% of our life. Or say 90%, and then our conscious mind, we have 10%. So say God, the subconscious, unconscious, we tithe our 10% over to God, our conscious being may thy will be done instead of my ego. I want to do this and that. You just surrender and be like, okay, I want your will to be done. I'm going to tithe my 10% choice to you to like manifest through me. That's how I've started trying to look at tithing. I'm not sure if that's how you see it or.
Yeah, I see tithing. Tithing first and foremost is, of course, a tenth, as we know. We give a tenth of what we call our increase. Now, people look at tithing solely as money. I give a tithe of my attention to things of God and so forth. So the truth of the matter is the tithe is only the beginning. And what I mean by that, when we truly understand who we are, we begin pouring, giving 70, 80, 90, 100% of who we are. A tithe is for the virtual reality.
Okay.
It's for, and the reason, because they knew that they had to set a standard for giving. But when you realize that it's all God's anyway, you surrender all that you have.
Yeah.
You will attempt to, I tell people not to get locked down. Tithe puts you under legalism. Christ never said anything about tithing. Now, the assumption was that we were going to give. Yeah. I know personally what I give in time. I know what I pour out, so I know what I give when I donate to charities or whatever. But I don't do it under compulsion of the law. I do it because it's in me to do. That's who I am. Just like you give and you pour out in your videos and you take time and you answer questions. People don't know what you do behind the scene or what it costs to be you and to pour out the message that you pour out. I do. Yeah. And so when I speak of tithing, people in the religious community, they feel that if they don't have at least the message of a tithe, their parishioners are not going to give. So it puts them under a form of legalism. But the tithe was only the beginning, if we truly understand. Once you have the experience of the promise, you realize in truth, it's all God's. You understand? So
yeah, only God.
And you pour out accordingly. You say, Father, how do you want to use me? When you're not under that understanding, realization, then you say, well, let me give a tithe, because what you want to do is at least feel like you're giving at least the basic obligation.
Yeah.
There's nothing that Father can't get from me. There's nothing that Father can't do through me because I'm open. So a tithe is for those who are not, and again, I'm not advocating legalism. I'm just saying a tithe for the church was the foundation, the basics. Okay, if you're not going to at least give this, but once you understand who you are, it's all God's and I'm God. And I can't help but to be poured out as a drink offering, as a food offering, as a tithe, as a, 20%, 30%. You know what I'm saying? So I understand, especially why churches push the tithe and put people under legal obligations, but nowhere in the New Testament, whether it be Paul speaking, they all said give, and it shall be given to you. Pressed down, shaken together, running over, will men, women pour into your bosom. We're called to give. But a tithe, if you're going off of the legality, it's just the basic foundation of what we're going to give. But the truth of the matter is, I can't do what I do and just give a tithe.
Yeah.
It wouldn't get done. You can't do what you do and just give a tithe. A tithe is the basic requirement for those who are under the law. But one thing, so it's the introduction. Yeah. But those who understand, they know that they will give all on the behalf of what Father has given them to do. So, like I said, I do understand, but even in the Jewish culture, they understand the tithe so well. You know who they tithe their first tenth to?
Hey.
Themselves.
Oh, wow.
And it goes back to the richest man in Babylon. First and foremost, pay yourself. If you get in the habit of paying yourself, what's going to happen is you're going to have the resources to give to the church or to whatever charity. I'm not advocating that you give to any particular, but if giving is what you want to do it not from a compulsion of the law, but because it's in you to do. You know, Bill and Melinda Gates, even though they're separated now, they give, you know, and people say, well, it's easy for them to give. They have billions of dollars. They have billions of dollars because they give.
Yeah, that's why they have billions.
That's it. And those who understand about giving, you know, most rappers that many of the big names that we see, let's say rappers, for example, they started giving CDs out of the back of their cars. They started giving these CDs away because they understood once they started giving away, it would create demand. If you want to be wealthy, if you want to be successful in any venture, find out something that people want that you have, and you begin giving it away. Start off with a tithe. Do the videos that you were doing. Like you said, I was doing videos every day because the great me wanted to do videos, as it were. So you start where you're at. You discover where you're at. You find out, and everybody says, well, I don't have anything to give. That's not true. That's not true. Everybody has something to give. You have conversations, whoever you are, with people, and there's things that y'all talk about that you all have in common. There's an audience for you. So when we're speaking about the tithe, begin where you're at, giving the little that you can where you're at. It's going to multiply. But what it's going to do is begin to create a avenue, a vehicle for other people to pour back into you. So a tithe is really nothing more than a seed. You don't take and throw, for example, you're trying to plant a harvest of corn. You don't sit there and throw as much corn on the ground that you're trying to grow. You put a seed in the ground and it produces a kernel. It produces a stalk. You understand? That stalk has 20, 30, 100, sometimes 1,000-fold from that one seed. A tithe is nothing more than a seed of what it is that we want to reproduce in our life. Now, we use money as a measure of a tithe, but say that it may be health. So you begin practicing little by little better health habits, better thinking habits, better relationship habits. You begin sowing the seeds, the tithe of what it is that you want to reproduce in your life. And what you will have from that seed is the harvest of whatever it is that you've planted. So the tithe is really the foundation of whatever it is that you're seeking to manifest in your life.
Beautiful. So to start with, put 10% of your attention towards, you maybe sit down seeing yourself as shaking the hand, getting that job, or with the ring on your finger. So you're tithing your time. I said, and then whatever seed we water grows, whether it's weed killer or beautiful roses,
Absolutely.
So that's one thing.
So we're all sowing. The question is what? And if we want to know what we've sown up until now, we need only to look at our lives. So sometimes this tithing could be a new thought, a new ideal. Say that we're dealing with lack. What thoughts of mine have I been sowing, have I been tithing into my life that's created this lack?
I like what you speak about. You go, if you want to know the future, just look at what you're thinking right now, and you'll know what your future is going to be.
Absolutely.
It's so beautiful, powerful as well. Just the simple little changing the thoughts can change so much.
It can transform your world. Absolutely.
It's so powerful, and it's good, because now I understand this. I don't rely on the 3D, like the shadow world. Someone says, oh, you can't do this because of that. I'm like, oh no, I get my power through here. Like, I'm going to imagine that it's working, and then it's going to work. I might get that callback, or I'm no longer relying on the external. And it gives me a very big, safe, I feel so secure. And I think Neville speaks on that. He's like, throw me in prison, and he can just imagine his way out of there. Because it would have been his thoughts that got him into prison in the first place.
Absolutely. And say for the person, let's say that's incarcerated, just because you're behind bars doesn't mean that you're incarcerated. We're first and foremost incarcerated in our mind. So even if that person, I'm thinking about the Birdman of Alcatraz, for example, he was more liberated than many people that were on the street. And the prison that most of us deal with more than anything else is the prison of our minds. So it's not locality. Many people look at locality and say, oh, he's behind bars. But many people behind bars are freer than those who are outside the bars.
Yeah, they get everything. They get their meals, they get company and
absolutely
education and whatnot.
Absolutely.
Like, that could be such a formative experience, or it could be hell, I guess, and it's however you're going to think about it. You know?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, there was something that came into my mind.
I'm laughing because
how long have we been going?
We've been talking.
There you go. I was going to say, that's right. I manifested, speaking with you.
Absolutely.
I started watching your videos, and I really enjoyed how you spoke, and you had such knowledge of it. I've been reaching out to you of certain scriptures because I value your opinion and wisdom.
Yeah.
So then I was like, I'd love to have a conversation, and for my viewers to be able to be introduced to you. I'm sure they already know of you, but have a good conversation. It's so I was imagining, even this morning I woke up and I just imagined the end saying like, oh, this has been a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. I went, wow, because I was like, oh, do I ask questions? And I stopped and I was like, seek God first. I was like, I could think of a gazillion different thoughts, but you know better. Like, I'm just going to allow you to flow through, and whatever comes. And it's been, we should probably start to wrap up.
Absolutely.
Any final messages for the listeners that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I'm going to speak as though I'm speaking to somebody that's probably hearing this message for the first time, whether you've heard it from my friend here or myself, but for the first time. And what we want you to get, no matter what your religious beliefs are, what your indoctrination has been, that God is within you, and he operates by way of as you think you are. The question is, what is it that you want to manifest in your life? Now, again, this is a process. This is a lot of people want to jump into this and they want to hit the ground running. There's going to be a lot of things that you have to learn, but understand that your thinking has brought you to wherever you are in life at this moment. And if you want to change it, you simply have to begin by changing your thought, changing your mind, and changing your world.
Beautiful. Thank you, Coach DeCarlo. Is that how to say it, DeCarlo?
DeCarlo, you got it.
Beautiful. Well, that's amazing. And change your thoughts, change your world.
Yeah.
Just start small.
Absolutely.
Start being conscious. So write out the not so great thoughts and then rewrite them.
Yeah.
And then just go from there, little steps at a time, and manifest a free coffee or seeing a butterfly.
Absolutely. And you're right. I like that the putting it down on paper. I think that it says write out the vision and make it plain so that those who have the vision, they can run with it. And I think that my friend is really on to something when he says, write it out. Now, what I'm not going to say, and what we're not going to give the impression of, is that you change your thoughts today and all of a sudden your world's going to miraculously change overnight. It's a process. It's a process of you continuously thinking right, thinking on what it is you want to manifest in your life. It becomes a habit and then a lifestyle. Would you agree?
I agree. Perfect. Wow. Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
Thanks, sir.
I will be in contact again.
Absolutely.
I always do this for my viewers. May peace be on your soul. And I love you. Thanks for watching.
Love you, brother. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye.